Welcome into the revamped, new-look version of the Capital PTBO Sports Show, an MNC podcast production, simulcast on your TV, Peterborough, Lindsay. You can come and see us most days at the Capital PTBO at 370 George Street North or online at capitalptbo.ca. Coming up on the show today, Austin Matthews is, well, he's mired in a bit of a slow start. The World Series hype is growing, and we are going to name our all-time favorite Toronto Raptors. I should point out, though, that the Capital PTBO in this particular broadcast would not be possible without the support of our good friend Brian Goldfinger of Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. If you've been injured, call 877-730-1777. Brian dedicates his practice exclusively on behalf of accident victims, disability claimants, and their families. He is a plaintiff personal injury lawyer through and through, and he does not accept work on behalf of insurance companies. Check him out, Brian Goldfinger. Again, that number, 877-730-1777. And we also couldn't do this show without those who subscribe on Patreon. Check us out, patreon.com/capitalptbo. If you spend some money, you'll get a chance to be on the wheel of Win Nothing.
There we go. You're
Got
starting
it right,
to get
Producer Matty.
Before we get to the wheel,
Yeah.
explain where we are today. Because this is a much different look for the Capital PTBO Sports Show.
We all know, look at this, microphone trailing off and everything. We all know that there's a famous wrestling destination known as the Heart Dungeon. Owen, Brett, Davey Boy.
Yep.
This is the Mercier Dungeon. This was originally, before we signed on to do a deal with Mark at the Capital PTBO, this is where all the shows were going to be done.
Yeah.
And we are in my basement. We've got Sports Illustrated on the wall. We got MNC up here. We've got behind you, Matt, our old MNC show promo with Rapid Robert making that crazy face. So this is the first show that we've done in here. We're doing it just because we all know that there's a terrible viral infection of sorts going around.
Yeah, and everyone's a little under the weather this time of year.
Everyone's a little bit under the weather. It's funny, my daughter has missed, 3 or 4 days of school already, which I think is more the norm. And I remember thinking in my head, there were school years entirely that I wouldn't miss that much time. And that's not me saying that, the kids today aren't. We just, unless I was throwing up, you were expected to go to school. Happily, that's changed because now we know that I probably spent many a day spreading germs to people and making them sick. So now you're a little bit more cautious to keep your child out. And as a matter of fact, we ran into my child's teacher at the doctor's yesterday. So I'm sure she's been out for a bit. So anyways, crazy stuff. So our main man, Mark, he's a little bit under the weather. So we figured, why not test out and try the studio and give this a little bit of a spin?
We've done other shows here. We've never done one on the video here, though, too. So this is it's kind of a test run for everything. And I like your Sports Illustrated wall on the side there. A couple of Sports Illustrated covers. We see Spartan Warrior in your shot.
Yeah, that was Mateen Cleaves, the 2000 Michigan State basketball team. Ironically, Morris Peterson, he was on that team.
He might come up later.
And we might talk about him when you and I dust off Jordan and Matt Rank stuff, a tribute. We're going to talk about our 5 greatest Raptors of all time.
Which is going to be really fun coming from 2 guys that aren't Raptors fans.
No, there's a total neutral observing to that.
Absolutely.
I know our man Brian Goldfinger, he'll probably have a totally separate list.
Oh, yeah. He'll pull out, like somebody from the early 2000s that we won't even know about.
Oh, yeah, like Chris Childs or, he'll just someone that we've never really thought of. But great stuff, yeah.
We got a wheel to spin.
Yeah, let's spin the wheel of Win Nothing.
So it's worth noting, I am a back-to-back winner now of the wheel.
Yeah, if you win another one,
it's a little suspicious, right?
We're going to raise some problems.
All right, the wheel's going. Let's see who we get. This week's Wheel of Win Nothing winner is, it's Producer Matty.
No.
3rd week in a row.
Okay, obviously there's something wrong with the algorithm that you have there.
It's a wheel that I spin on. I don't know if it's depends because so the wheel rotates before you spin it, and then it's a slow rotation, and then when you click it, it starts. I don't know if it spins the same every way. Like if you start on one spot and it'll land on one spot. Remember people used to try to on Wheel of Fortune, they used to try to master the way it would spin.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I'm doing that just unintentionally, but I'm a winner again, 3-time winner.
Well, we apologize to all the other fine folk who do a great job supporting us at Patreon, patreon.com/capitalptbo. I saw a couple of comments on a few of our threads from our main man, Brad Sinclair, and I know he's been a subscriber for some time now.
Yep.
Great guy. Go and check out my man, Brad. NHL topics for today, Matt. We'll start with hockey, and a lot of people still talking about what I would describe as a pedestrian start for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah,
I mean, kind of, right? You've lost to Montreal, Arizona, Vegas. A lot of people circling Austin Matthews, just 1 goal in his first 7 games.
I think with the Leafs, the expectations are always too high. So unless you start 9-0, like everyone's going to freak out right away.
The thing with Austin Matthews, and I know a lot of people are pointing at him at this given time, it's not like he hasn't gotten points. I think he's got 6 points, a goal and 5 assists.
Yep, through 7 games so far.
And last year, I don't have the splits off the top of my head, but he did not have a great sort of first 10 games. And then remember he went on that torrid pace where he scored like 45 goals in 45 games or however that worked.
Yep.
So again, I am not one to push the panic button right now, but it'll be interesting to see the reaction by the time they get home because they've got that trip through the western United States, which is always difficult even when you have a good team, and maybe some of those teams are lesser thans out there. Always a bit difficult going out west. But the Toronto Maple Leafs off to what we would describe as a bit of a ho-hum start, and needless to say, Leaf Nation, they're fired up about it.
Well, and the funny thing is with Leaf Nation is, yeah, it's a ho-hum start. You're 4 points back at first in the division. Like, it's not that big of a gap. You've only played 7 games, and they've got 8 points, but Boston's first place, and they've got 12 points in 7 games. So
I could be wrong. I'm not going to overstate a huge correction at this given moment, but I did feel like if there was going to be one of those core teams in the Atlantic Division that was going to fall back to the pack a little bit and kind of be a little bit more in the at least striking distance of Ottawa and Detroit, it was going to be the Boston Bruins. So far, I do not look good with that prediction.
Meantime, you got the Tampa Bay Lightning down at the second last in the Atlantic Division.
Yeah,
so.
And you never know when your time runs up as a bit of a dynasty. I think they're just too talented over an 82-game season.
They're going to even out, of course. I just find it so funny with the Leafs because you look at them; they're 4-3, and I'm a Habs fan, as we've talked about. The mood between the franchises, between a 4-3 Leafs team and a 3-4 Habs team, could not be any different. Like Habs fans are fired up with a 3-4 start.
Yeah, yeah.
And Leaf fans, like the world is ending because they're 4-3.
I don't know if you're like this because obviously, regardless of what the start is, your expectation for the Montreal Canadiens is not overly high.
Yeah,
given the season. So when I was at that phase with the Red Wings over the last couple of years, it was kind of okay that they lost, so as long as the guys who were scoring were pieces that I wanted to look forward to watching down the line.
Yep.
So anytime I check a box score for the Montreal Canadiens, you're kind of looking. Did Cole Caulfield score? He's off to a good start.
5 goals, yeah.
Does Nick Suzuki get points? He's off to a good start. Of course, you'll talk about Wi-Fi winning fights.
My guy Arbor Xhekaj, who won fights, scored his first goal the other night.
Just destroyed former Pete Zach Cassian. He didn't
manhandled him. And Cassian's a tough cookie.
And what's your take on the first overall pick so far? He did end up getting his. I'm chickening out for his name.
Slavkovsky. Slavkovsky. Yeah. Scored his first goal. Got hurt the same game. He's been out since, so he's supposed to be back hopefully by this weekend.
Do you think they keep him?
That's the tough thing. You got 9 games before you have to send him down, or else you burn a year of his contract. I think so. I mean, I think he hasn't looked out of place by any means. Like, it's not like he's costing them goals by any means. And when he's out there, like, he's just one of those guys. He's a big body. You got to play like a big body. Yeah. There's so many guys that don't use that size, and I'd like to see him start using it. But he's also 4 games into an NHL career, so maybe a little too early to make too many judgments.
Yeah, I think if you're a Montreal fan and you look at it and say, look, if this guy can play as a regular over the course of a season and give me, it's not going to be sexy from a number 1 overall pick, but if he gets in that 20 to 25 goal range, 55 points, I think there's a lot to build on there. If you look at some of the great players, even like Joe Thornton, Steven Stamkos. Like, it took them a bit in their rookie season to sort of find their footing.
He's also playing 10 minutes a game.
Well, exactly. So it's a different type of role, and not everybody is Alex and Sidney and Connor, and they don't just immediately jump to the highest level of hockey and start dominating. Sometimes, especially as you mentioned, bigger players, bigger frames take them a little bit more, accustomed to finding size. And
smaller ice for him, too.
Smaller ice. Learning how to use his size to get space, all that sort of thing.
Part of it, too, is, like you mentioned Sid and Ovechkin. We were so spoiled as NHL fans for so long with first overall picks just tearing it up in their rookie year. That's not always going to happen. I think we've seen it level out a little more the last couple of years.
Sometimes it's okay that they're just really good NHLers.
Yeah.
And they hang around for 15 years.
Sometimes that's all you got to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not worried about the kid. He's only played 5 games.
Yeah.
So
he's got a lot of stuff. Like when you talk, you can't teach the size. He's obviously got a nose for the net. I've seen him have scoring chances, despite the fact he's only got the 1 goal. So
And he just looks the part. Like, he looks
He
like
does.
a stud.
Yeah.
He's got the jaw, and
Yeah.
he like broke the bike machine in the off season when they were trying to figure out his cardio.
Someone who maybe doesn't jump out to you as what we would call an elite athlete, but he has an interesting record. Phil Kessel set the Ironman streak record this week by playing game number 990 in a row.
Amazing.
Pretty incredible. This is somebody who was criticized heavily in Toronto about his fitness levels and what he was bringing to the table. You could line up 5,000 people in a room and look around and be like, which guy is going to set the Ironman record? And Phil Kessel would probably be 4,999th.
Yeah,
behind you.
He's like I might have an edge over this guy. I was never a big Phil Kessel guy, just as a Habs fan, but I mean, he's a cancer survivor. He came back from cancer. Got just ripped on by Toronto media about his fitness, and then he left and won 2 cups.
Terrible era of Maple Leaf hockey.
Yeah, awful era of.
And Kessel was never the guy that was built to be the number one focal point.
No,
right?
That's why Pittsburgh was so successful with him because it was the HBK line that was so popular, and he won 2 cups there. And he's just the guy that his whole career. It's funny reading some of the things from his former teammates because some people say, he's a player that he knows how to play without stressing out his body. He doesn't get hit a lot, one of those guys. And then other people just call him a freak athlete and a freak of nature. And he doesn't look like it. When you look at him, his hairline's about halfway up his head, and he's got a beer gut on him. But
I think there's probably a little bit of both, in that you know how to play. You're not necessarily getting lambasted every night because that would take its toll gradually. And it's also just a bit of luck over the course of a long period of time that you didn't accidentally get hit with a puck at the side of the net.
It's so easy to jam your wrist.
Yeah, exactly.
Man,
or you didn't take that.
He's probably played hurt a few times.
Totally. And you take the whack on your glove and it misses your wrist. And there's all those sort of elements that kind of come into play, but it's pretty remarkable. Does it feel like the record is respected enough based on the fact that it was just set by Keith Yandel? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The fact that you had 2 guys neck and neck. I mean, it was different in baseball when you had Cal Ripken going after this 70-year-old record of one guy and nobody's really close. So I think that was kind of maybe has dimmed it a little bit. But if
I think so.
he's going to get to 1,000, and anytime you play 1,000 straight games,
that's especially
insane.
in hockey. It's such a physical sport. There's one story that his wife was having a baby, so he played 1 shift and then hopped on a plane. That's amazing. That was
a little bit hokey, but yeah.
So he tied the record against the Leafs earlier this week. Can you imagine if somebody just accidentally put him into the boards head first? That would be the most hated guy in hockey.
Head first, too, eh?
Well, it's
Matt Latour's out for blood.
That's how you hurt somebody.
So the question was 990 straight games. He scored his 400th goal. A lot of people saying, is this record and this record alone, with some postseason success, good enough to form a Hall of Fame resume for you?
Ooh, let's see. 400 goals. He's got over 550 assists. Almost 1,000-point guy.
A lot of games, obviously.
1,200 games, just over.
It's basically...
I wouldn't be upset if he made the Hall of Fame, but I mean, if he doesn't, I wouldn't be surprised.
Here's the thing. Take away the stats. I mean, there's no way he gets to 500, is there? Based on his pacing now?
No, not only.
He's fallen off a cliff.
He scored 40 goals the last 4 years.
Yeah, so he's not getting to 500. That's usually a magic number. I don't foresee any individual accolades coming up.
No, unless he wins was it the Lady Bang?
Lady Bang or something like that.
See, I like he had
There's no Stanley Cup coming unless he gets traded and moved out.
Always a pretty good playoff performer. Underratedly good. With the Bruins, he had 11 points in 11 games, and then he had 22 in 24, and then 23 in 25. So always a pretty good playoff performer when they went deep. But yeah, I don't know. He's one of those guys where I like Phil Kessel. I don't think I'm I know you hold the Hall of Fame at a much higher standard than I do.
I do.
It's not a pedestal for you. For me, it's I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't, but I mean, if he makes it, I'm not that upset about it. I like Phil Kessel.
I've got a bunch of players here, as you can imagine. I mean, Phil Kessel was not better than Jeremy Roenick, I don't think. He was not better than Pierre Turgeon. He certainly wasn't better than Alexander Mogilny. Locally, Steve Larmer.
Larmer's one that always
to me,
comes up. Yep.
Calder Trophy, Canada Cup MVP, Stanley Cup champion. He had an 880-game streak himself. and just kind of cashed out after, 13 years and said I was done. Didn't hang around.
And he only lost the streak because of a contract dispute?
Yeah, contract dispute, which is pretty cool. I've got Curtis Joseph, if you're going to go goaltender. Him and Tom Barrasso are two guys that the Hall doesn't do a great job with goalies. I feel like you have to rack up a whole bunch of Vezinas to even get a sniff.
Yeah.
I know Lundqvist, he'll go in first ballot for sure. And then I've got, just a sidebar, Don Cherry. The fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame is crazy to me.
I'm not a Don Cherry guy. Like, that's a whole other podcast.
As a builder, I guess now you can't because he got sort of like moved off Rogers. But did any personality do any more for the game in the sport of hockey than Don Cherry?
Ron McLean.
You want to fight?
I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Not in your house.
Jack Adams Trophy winner too as a coach.
Yeah, I guess
Made
he
it
was.
to some Cup finals.
I keep forgetting he was a good coach. That's because when I think Don Cherry,
a really good coach.
I started watching hockey in the early 2000s, so I only really know Don as the TV guy.
Interesting stuff and an interesting Hall of Fame debate for one Phil Kessel that is waiting. Shifting gears to the National Football League. A couple Hall of Famers, no doubt about it. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. Matt, which one of these guys is going out in a bigger puff of smoke here?
Oh, my goodness.
This is shocking to me.
I think Tom Brady.
Tom Brady gets a useless field goal at the end of a bad game and loses on the road to P.J. Walker and the Carolina Panthers 21-3.
And they're winning the division at 3-4. That's the thing is, like, both teams are 3-4, but the Packers, they're stuck behind the Vikings at 5-1. The Patriots are winning their not Patriots. Buccaneers are winning their division at 3-4. Like, so I want to say it's Brady just because he looks like a shell of him former self. But yeah, like Aaron Rodgers not been good. But Rodgers, I guess Brady doesn't have a lot of tools either. But Aaron Rodgers, it felt like they took everything away from him as soon as he re-signed.
So that one to me is a little bit more explainable based on the pieces around him. You're right. Mm-hmm. They ended up losing some. Tom Brady, we know that there was a shift in coaching staff. Some banged up. Was it Cole Beasley just up and left the team?
Yep.
Tom's obviously been criticized for a lot of the personal distractions and going to the Kraft wedding and just seeming kind of half in, half out. It reminds me of something that Michael Wilbon says on PTI all the time. And I don't think it's his quote, but he does reference it a lot. And that is, no matter how hard they try, Father Time is undefeated.
Yep.
Eventually, almost every great player, really, there's going to be a couple of raw examples, but don't they always stay just that one bit too long?
Yeah, if Tom
Brady went out last year, I thought that was the perfect time to go out. He had a great regular season.
He could have gone out 5 years ago, and I would have been like, "That's the perfect time." Because the problem with Tom Brady is it's too much of a good thing.
But
right?
think about that.
You want to come back.
Even that playoff game, they lose to the Rams, but he leads a 27-3 comeback to tie the game in the fourth quarter, and there's all these miraculous moments. And I was thinking, you know what? That is a great time to walk away after that individual performance.
But nobody wants to walk away when they think they still have it.
That's the trouble. That's the discipline of it.
I'm a big UFC guy. Yeah. Anderson Silva, he's fighting Jake Paul this weekend. That's a guy that should have retired 10 years ago because he's done nothing but get
Silva
beat up.
was in GOAT conversation of unbeatable.
You can argue
guys.
At his prime, he's still the greatest in his prime. But as far as unbeatable, the aura of invincibility is gone.
Do you remember his first loss?
Was it Chris Weidman? No.
I don't know who it was, but I was at a Dave & Buster's in Vaughan, and everybody jammed the bar section because he was fighting. And I think he was winning the fight, but he got caught peacocking a litittle bit.
Yeah, it was...
and then caught one, and then that was it.
So that was Chris Weidman. He got caught. He was... Yeah, because he was powering away with his head. Having his hands up. Then he got knocked out, lost the title. And then the rematch, he broke his leg.
Yeah.
So he just never quite had his number. That wasn't his first loss. It was his first loss as champion.
Oh, yeah. I see. A little bit different. But I do remember a where I was moment for that. Dave & Buster's watching it on a big screen.
But Silva's like that. So many pro athletes stick around too long and then they end up making kind of a mockery of themselves because nobody wants to leave. I mean, Mark's going to kill us. We're talking about wrestling. Look at The Undertaker. The Undertaker thinks he has it and comes back another year.
I encourage the wrestling drops now that Mark's not here because he's just going to be watching it stewing. But look, on everything.
The Undertaker has a half-decent match, thinks he can do it again, and has a disappointing match. But nobody wants to end on being a disappointment, but nobody wants to end when they think they still have it.
There are a bunch of examples that I dug up. And Johnny Unitas playing with the Chargers, Joe Namath playing with the Rams. This is just football specific. Emmitt Smith going with the Arizona Cardinals. like just to prolong his rushing record. There's very few who kind of get it right. And even John Elway, so he retires with a Super Bowl championship, which is amazing and has a great last game. But even that year, sort of banged up, not quite John Elway still.
It's like Peyton Manning's last couple of years.
Peyton Manning would be another example of, again, he did end up winning, so he'll probably laugh at us. But he's replaced by Brock Osweiler, and it's just sort of like him and Han on what's going on.
I think, shout out Tiki Barber. Probably left before he had to. But no one's ever. That's the
other thing.
No one's ever going to remember him being a shell of
people
himself.
Who fall out of love with the sport, who leave when they're still physically great. Barry Sanders, Jim Brown. You mentioned Tiki Barber, usually at the running back position.
Yep.
In hockey, of course, we've talked about Mike Bossy. Sort of like gets injured and sort of just vanishes, and he's an amazing guy. But that's just what I kept thinking with Tom Brady. Is like when we look back on the last 20 years, and people just remember the like Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2022 version.
It's going to be ugly.
It's not going to be great. It's not going to be great, that's for sure. The World Series, Matty. How close have you followed the baseball playoffs? I'm going to guess you've watched a total of 5.5 minutes.
I watched the Blue Jays implode.
Since the Blue Jays were eliminated.
Outside of the Blue Jays, I watched a couple Phillies San Diego games, weirdly enough. Didn't watch any of the Astros Yankees, which is what you'd think I'd be watching, being an American League fan. But yeah, I haven't watched much. And I mean, Houston, Philadelphia doesn't really get me excited.
I'm going to get you excited for this matchup.
Are you okay?
I'm going to get you excited for this matchup. And one of the reasons why is Philadelphia has been basically the most red-hot team, say, the last 35 games of the season. Like, at least. Like, they were absolutely on fire. It was crazy. Houston has yet to lose in the playoffs. They're
really?
Perfect.
I didn't even know that.
They are absolutely perfect. They sweep Seattle. They sweep the New York Yankees. I think they were better than the New York Yankees, but the fact that they swept them, I think, was a statement.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. I think you've always got the fun narrative now based on their history of cheering against the Houston Astros. So storyline-wise, we have a villain, right? We have the villain that got caught cheating, never really got their comeuppance because the season got scrubbed and all this stuff.
They never got the boo birds.
They never got the boo birds that they probably should. And now they're saying like, hey, who cares about the technology? We're still really good and we're going to get it done. So there you go. You've got that sort of storyline. And then you've got Philadelphia, which, I mean, either that or Boston, in my opinion, are the two most hated cities overall for like fan bases.
Like just people.
And yet you're kind of cheering for the Phillies because they do have a very likable team that was resilient, that had their manager fired. Bryce Harper, two-time MVP, somebody who has basically appeared on Sports Illustrated as a 16-year-old baseball phenom and went on to live up to the hype considerably of what he was bringing to the table. He's been outstanding in the playoffs, had a big home run in Game 5 against San Diego. And then as sort of a Cubs admirer, and we'll get to that in a second, Kyle Schwarber hitting 500-foot home runs to like lead off ball games. I just love the atmosphere and the Philly fan base. The atmosphere in that building is so great. It's so big. They haven't been relevant in a while. This was the first time in the playoffs since 2011. Haven't won it since 2008. They lost in 2009 on kind of a fun team with, Chase Utley and Jimmy Rollins and Cole Hamels and those guys. And now we're looking at a very starved fan base ready to go one-on-one with the Houston Astros. It's almost like to beat a villain, you need a bigger villain. And that's the way that I kind of look at this. And I'm super excited. I think it's going to be great baseball.
So, unlike most people, I actually like the city of Philly. I've been watching a lot of the Rocky movies lately. That might be why.
But you get it. Like, there's a bravado with Philly.
Yeah, like it's like Philly's got like a culture. But like watching them get kind of propped up as the underdog when having the second highest payroll in baseball. I don't know if I'm buying that. Like I get that Houston's undefeated and they're, recent champions, but I can't you can't convince me this is it's like if the Yankees are over the underdog. They're just not. It doesn't happen.
Like ever, no matter what.
In a league where there's no salary cap, if you're spending the second most amount of money, you can't be the underdog in my eyes. And I get Bryce Harper's a lot of that, but I don't know. I can't find myself cheering for either team.
Matchup notwithstanding, is the World Series something that's typically on your fan radar, or do you usually gloss over it?
I'll tune into a couple games.
Because for me, regardless of I've watched less baseball in the last, really since the pandemic than ever in my life.
Yeah.
And I mean, being a father, it plays into that for sure, and just not having the same amount of time. But I always make sure that the World Series is one of those like marquee things that I'm going to hang around for. And I've got a couple of ones that I can remember. But for you, was it something that you'd lock in games 1 through 7, or was it just I'm going to catch 3 or 4 innings here and there?
It's like if it's on, I'll watch it. Like I don't go out of my way to watch the World Series. The last time I did that would have been Kansas City, San Francisco.
Oh,
like
wow.
when Kansas City beat the Jays, and that's just because I wanted to see them get beat, and I got what I wanted. But yeah, like I've never watched a World Series games 1 to 4 or 7 or whatever it ends up being. It's something that it's definitely on my radar. Like I know who wins it, but it's not something I'm going to go out of the way to watch. I've always joked that I'm only a Jays fan when they're above 500, and other than that, I don't know what's happening in baseball. It's like nobody told me the Red Sox were bad now. I had no clue. I thought they were still a good team.
There's a pattern with the Red Sox. They either win the World Series or they finish dead last.
Exactly. And I guess they were dead last this year, yeah. So, I mean, for me, it's on the radar. It's just not something I'm going to make time to watch. And I think part of that is, like I just mentioned, I don't really like either team. Like, if it was a team, if it was the Rays or somebody, I'd watch it. But, yeah, I don't know. I just can't get behind either one of these teams.
I got 4 that I want to bring up World Series-wise. And
are we doing World Series roulette?
No, we're not.
I feel like we're building towards this.
We're not totally doing World Series roulette, but you weren't born. I was way too young for the Blue Jays 92-93. I remember some semblance of the excitement around the event, but I couldn't sit down and tell you, like, I remember this play and this thing, of course, other than what we've seen, over the course of history with the Joe Carter home run and the Ed Sprague home run and all that kind of stuff. The first one that I remember being truly great was 1997. It was Cleveland against Florida, the Marlins. And the Marlins were new. They had come around in, I think, 92 or 93. This was like their 3rd or 4th year of existence. Mm-hmm. And that just never happened in baseball by the way it was situated. Like, if you were an expansion team, you were probably going to be really bad for 10 years. Florida has an owner that goes out and essentially buys a ridiculous team for 1 year as a 1-year one-off and cashes in. And the World Series that year against Cleveland, which, they had been to the World Series in 95, hadn't won since 1948, still haven't won since 1948.
Long drought, yeah.
And they had, a star-studded team with Jim Thome and Manny Ramirez and a lot of these different pieces, David Justice, and figures that you'd come to know in years later, Sandy Alomar Jr. And that went 7. I think it was 3-2 Cleveland going back to Florida. Florida wins Game 6. And in Game 7, Cleveland has a 2-1 lead in the bottom of the 9th. The save's blown by Jose Mesa. They end up losing it in the 11th inning on a single by Edgar Renteria. I think it ended up cashing, I want to say Craig Counsell. But I just remember just the absolute gut punch to the Cleveland organization, who that year, they were a bit of underdogs because I think they were an 88-win team. And they had beaten the Yankees in the division series. And that was during a run where the Yankees were going to win the World Series in 96, 98, 99, 2000. So it was like the one time that they lost was that ALDS against Cleveland.
Is that a Shapiro team?
That he would have been close to.
Yeah.
If not,
he was there early 2000s.
Like Hart was the general manager, Hargrove was the manager. It could have just predated him in terms of being involved with the actual like fingerprints of the team, but 1997 is always one that stuck out to me. 2001, the first time that we ever saw the World Series leak into November. There was a bit of a delay in the season because of September 11th. The one time maybe I was rooting my heart out for the New York Yankees because you get tied up in the love for New York and all this kind of stuff. And then there's 2 guys named Kurt Schilling and Randy Johnson who just say, not going to happen.
No,
and again,
thank you.
You have a team leading in Game 7 in the top of the 9th inning or the bottom of the 9th inning and unable to get it done. And Luis Gonzalez ended up getting a single off Mariano Rivera in the 10th inning the 9th inning. The 9th inning to secure the victory there. So a couple of notable ones there. And then one where I really had no vested interest. I was probably cheering for Texas. And this is the 2011 World Series where, again, the Cardinals have this dramatic comeback in David Freese in Game 6 and are able to extend it to Game 7. I think 3 different times they're down to their final strike. And then David Freese was able to hit a ball over Nelson Cruz's head, and then he came back and hit a walk-off home run. So that one was, and not surprisingly, 2016, being a Cubs fan. That's
that's enough.
Always stand out.
You can't see
to
it,
me.
but it's right here on the wall.
I do have the Sports Illustrated cover of Anthony Rizzo, Ben Zobrist, Mike Montgomery, Javier Baez, and Addison Russell. So those are just some that jump out to me. But the World Series has always been among my favorite events.
I think part of it for me is like any kind of championship. Like the Stanley Cup's a little different because I'm more of a hockey fan than anything. But like with the NBA, I don't really care about the finals unless there's either my team in it, and the Pelicans have never been in the NBA finals, or there's like history at stake, like the Warriors or a LeBron thing,
right?
Something like that. So like when it's two teams like this, like a cheating team versus a really high payroll team, I really don't care.
It doesn't matter.
It's not on my radar at all.
I wonder if this is on your radar. I've got a few miscellaneous topics here. One of my favorite events also is the NCAA men's basketball tournament.
Yep.
Jim Nantz stepping away from calling games will be succeeded by Ian Eagle.
I mean, I'm cool with that. I like Ian Eagle.
Ian Eagle's really good. Jim Nantz, I think the most underrated part of his catalog, because he is the A crew on CBS for football, is the fact that he's basically been a staple with the March Madness tournament since 1986.
Has it been that long?
He goes way back. He was a studio analyst, and then he ended up vaulting into being the A crew on that. And Jim Nantz, I mean, I'm not sure how people can not like what he brings to the table, but he adds a certain prestige to the broadcast. There's no doubt about it. But Ian Eagle's good. I like Ian Eagle.
Ian Eagle's really good.
Yeah. He's been getting a lot more of the marquee games too, so you're getting more familiar. I think what makes A crews and B crews is just that A crews always have those matchups that everyone's tuning into, right?
Yeah.
And so the work of the B crew and the C crew often goes like a little bit underrated. But I think Ian Eagle is going to do outstanding. But Jim Nantz, shout out for just the amazing work that he's done with that tournament over the years.
Does Kevin Harlan do March Madness? Because I'm a Kevin Harlan mark.
Yeah,
and
TNT.
I probably should know this. Yeah, it's just, I mean, for me, like
they don't ever get the final though.
No, but that guy to me is the gold standard of play-by-play. Like
it's usually Kevin Harlan and Reggie Miller.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. What a duo that. Yeah. I know you're a big Reggie guy. What a duo that is. Kevin Harlan for me though, whether it's football or it's basketball, I can listen to that guy call a game all day.
Yeah, he's awesome stuff there. I wrote this down. I want to keep this up. Now, you have a portfolio of being our resident soccer expert on this program. Now, boil it down for me. Like, I can legit consider you a soccer expert.
Okay.
Because we're getting into World Cup time, and we're going to need someone to give us advice.
Just drank too much water.
Are you all right over there?
Man. Yeah, I'm good.
Jeez,
little in the lungs, we're good.
You're a little scared. You want me to avoid the soccer topic?
No, we're good. We're good. Give me the soccer. I can take it. The football, if you will.
What do we make about Qatar and some of the weird rules that we're seeing for fans?
So I haven't looked too much into this.
We're treading carefully here. I understand it's a Muslim country. They have different perspectives on a lot of different things. This event is a way of them to showcase themselves to the world. But some of the things you're reading about what fans can't do in order to conduct themselves in the stadiums.
So,
I don't know how there wasn't a meeting at the very start of this process where it's like, hey, okay, Qatar. People are going to have to drink and swear, and maybe there's some...
It's soccer. You're not watching soccer if you're not swearing.
And there's going to be people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, and we just need to accept them. One, because you should. Two, because this is a major, major event, and if you want it to showcase yourself. But a lot of stuff coming up. You can't kiss in the stands. You can't shake hands with members of the opposite sex who are Muslim. Obviously, no alcohol, like no rowdy behavior.
The alcohol one's a big one.
I guess there's drinking spots, just not openly in the stands. That was what I gathered from it.
But bringing alcohol into the country is forbidden.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think Qatar should have never had the World Cup to start. Like, that's a whole different... Because it's a bidding process, right? Qatar, I'm sure they're a soccer nation, but they're not... When you think of, like, the dominant soccer powers, they're not one of them. And then we heard... probably 6 years ago now, like all the different stories about building, like people dying while they're building these facilities.
It was labor laws in question.
Yeah, it was a bad look pretty well from the get-go with Qatar. And not to mention that a World Cup in November is just weird. Like, it hasn't clued into me yet that this starts in like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm a soccer fan, but it's like, when I think of the World Cup, I think of being like really sweaty in the middle of July and just seeing car flags everywhere driving by. Like, that's all I think of with the World Cup in Ontario.
Yeah, definitely.
And like, I didn't realize how many Italian friends I had, like, although they're not in it.
No.
Yeah, it's weird. And I mean, I think this is going to be a wake-up call for FIFA to maybe say, hey, just kind of stick with what you're comfortable with, because clearly going somewhere that's a little left field, for lack of a better term, hasn't worked out. And I mean, we'll see how it is after the tournament's done. As long as they don't have like vuvuzelas, we're good.
That was polarizing for
Those
sure.
were
I'm
awful.
going to be so interested in the car flag, the car flag decorum this time around, knowing that Canada is in, and we should basically all be cheering for Canada.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be.
Are you going to see the doubles?
There's going
Are
to
you
be
going to
some.
see the cross of St. George on one and Canada on the other?
You're gonna tell me my guy Aaron Caton doesn't have a German flag in one window and a Canadian
sure
flag
he
in the
does.
other. I think the other thing is not like without getting too political is like the Canadian flag has been part of a lot of protests here the last couple of years.
Oh God, you're trying to get us kicked
No,
off
I'm
the
not. I'm not
air.
going to. But like it's been part of a lot of protests.
Got to
Like,
reclaim it.
when you see a hockey stick holding up a Canadian flag on a car now, you think that person's coming from a protest most of the time. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see how that is. But also, car flags in the winter, like
Can you not do that?
you can. It might be a little cold because your
Yeah.
window's going to be cracked a little bit.
I never would have thought of that.
So I don't know.
That's
I mean, for me, I'm excited for the World Cup. I'm really excited for Canada to be in the World Cup. Although Alphonso Davies got pretty badly beaten up.
Yeah.
He got not a concussion, an orbital fracture, or it wasn't pretty. He got kicked in the face. So hopefully he's good to go for the World Cup because he's kind of the lifeline of Team Canada.
Belgium, Morocco, and there's a third team that Canada's playing. Egypt?
Oh, you want the groups? Yeah, one sec.
Don't worry, we'll get into it a little bit more as the date comes closer. It's just you're starting to hear more of these stories kind of pop up.
Yeah.
I know their first game's against Belgium for sure.
Belgium, Morocco, Croatia.
Oh, okay, no. That's tough. Those
Little-
are two tough teams.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
Morocco. You get
Morocco's
draw.
a good team, too.
Yeah.
Can't sleep on that.
And
But-
Belgium's the number 2 overall team, I think.
and Croatia went to the final last time. So it's there's a lot of stiff competition in Group F, but I mean, there's definitely tougher groups. So we'll see how Canada does. I think they're going to do all right. Like, I don't want to say they're going to get out of the group stage because that's a really high bar to set. But
Yeah.
I think it's not it's not too far out of the realm of possibility.
Matty, you want to do Record Machine? We haven't done Record Machine in a few weeks.
Are we doing Record Machine? All right. I don't have the sound effects.
Record Machine!
Record Machine!
All right, so how this works, everybody, is I label 3 records, all of which we pretty much agree are unbreakable.
Yep.
But we try and boil down the minutia to decide which one is actually the most breakable, and then we rank them 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
All right, I focused on team wins for this one.
Okay.
No, I didn't. I focused on wins in general for
Okay.
this one. Record Machine. Option number 1. The San Francisco 49ers win 21 straight non-home games. 21 straight non-home games. It was from, I want to say 1988 through 91.
Okay.
Now, I use non-home games because 19 were authentic road games and 2 of them were Super Bowls at neutral sites. So there
Okay.
you go. UCLA Bruins win 7 straight men's basketball titles, encompassing a crazy era with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton, John Wooden, and all those cast of characters. And then on the individual side, Byron Nelson wins 11 straight PGA titles. Think about if a guy has a good season, he maybe wins 4. Imagine doing that 11 consecutive years. And obviously the competitiveness of the field has changed a lot in those years. Those are all pretty good. Let's workshop it a bit. In the National Football League, to win 21 games, including 2 Super Bowls, straight on the road, not at home. I mean, home field advantage plays a lot into the National Football League. Does it play the most? I still argue statistically speaking, the NBA seems to matter the most for home court because of what it does and how it galvanizes role players, and they just play better in front of home fans.
Yep.
That being said, fans actually impact the game in football if they're loud enough and they can create.
You can't hear the comms, yeah.
You can't hear the comms, so there's snap count, and then people are false starting all over the place. They can have a direct impact on the game. This is so impressive. And this, of course, is the Niners team with Joe Montana and Jerry Rice. That one's going to be
I
difficult
think
to
it's
break.
the most likely to be broken out of these 3.
Really?
So I look at, okay, first off, to win 11 straight PGA titles, how old are you right now, Jordan Mercier?
I'm 33. I
Go
had to
win
think
one
about
every
it.
year till you're 44. I might not be feeling that great in 11 days, let alone 11 years. 11 years ago, I was 14 years old. Like, that's unfathomably, I think that might be the most unbreakable. But the Bruins is pretty close because March Madness is a tough tournament to win, and you have a turnover every year with players because guys just graduate. They're done. They're done their college athletics.
You can't do that one anymore. You just can't.
You probably can't do any of these.
No.
I think if there's any that are most likely, though, it's like I can see like you're telling me like Patrick Mahomes has 3 really good years. They couldn't do that. I could see it.
The Bruins one's interesting, the men's basketball one, because there was also a difference. Obviously, the tournament wasn't what the tournament is now, just in terms of the amount of at-large bids. And I believe it stayed confined. UCLA was able to have an easier path than most teams because they played all of their games in the regional part in California. And I think not a lot of travel. Either they only played Pac-12 teams, or there was something funky about that setup that it made it. They were a great team, of course, but it made it a little bit more advantageous to be able to make it further in that tournament. I think the number one is the Byron Nelson winning 11 straight
number one
tournaments.
Most likely to be broken or unbreakable?
No, unbreakable.
Okay, yeah, I think I agree.
As I said, over the course of a season, a guy wins 3-4 tournaments. Great. The fact that you would win 11 consecutive weeks is insane. And it just won't happen. And it was in a time in probably the 40s and the 30s that, I mean, golf just wasn't as wide. We don't know what the depth of field would be like for
you're
those
talking
tournaments.
like 11 tournaments in a year.
Like literally
I thought you meant he won
tournaments.
the PGA Championship 11 straight years.
No. These are like consecutive tournaments.
Oh, then I think that's much more breakable. I thought you meant he won the same tournament every year for 11 years.
No, I think that would be more breakable.
No.
11 to win 11 golf tournaments in a row. Like, just let that. I don't even think you're grasping
You
that.
just go on a heater.
I would be interested to see, and maybe you could bring it up on the Magic Box, like Tiger Woods. Did Tiger Woods ever even win 5 straight golf tournaments? I'm going to suggest probably not. So this is something that I think you're like disrespecting a little bit.
I don't know.
And the fact it's been around since whatever he said it in the 1940s, I mean, that just tells me the longevity of it. Also, there's been some great players.
Tiger Woods at 7.
He won 7 straight?
That's not that far off.
Tiger Woods is also the GOAT. So, I mean, who's going to come
be another
around?
one? Ben Hogan had 6. Tiger Woods had 6 on a different occasion.
Are you counting on maybe Liv?
Have you seen Tiger Woods' kid play? He's pretty good.
Maybe Liv waters the competition for a couple of those weeks?
That's possible, too.
I don't know, man. I'm going to put that as my number 1. And then I'm going to put Bruins number 2. And then you were right about the Niners. It's unfathomable to win that many non-home games in a row. But I think in comparison to the others, that's the way that the order needs to shake down.
So Tiger Woods had a 7 and a 6.
Yeah. Percentage-wise, that's not super close to 11.
No. But, I mean, it's like a month away.
And you're talking about the greatest player of all time. Like, think about who's playing in the field now. Like, Xander Schauffele. Like, is he going to win 5 in a row? Like,
probably not.
I don't think so.
PGA Tour wins for 1 year. It's also Byron Nelson with 18, and then Ben Hogan second with 13.
The Nels man.
Nobody
even talks about him.
He had a good 1945.
Is that what year it was?
That's the year.
So there you go. Some players off at war, I'm sure, too. Like, there's a bunch of factors.
So we just need another war, and
Yeah.
Our guy Xander's got a shot.
I don't know. What's your official way of doing it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think now that you put it like that, it is pretty unbreakable. I think the 49ers is most likely to get broken. And then I'm going to put Nelson at second and UCLA. Like 7 straight wins for like if you can
It's ridiculous.
Like keeping core players together, you can do that, but like you lose your guys after 4 years. And it's a huge March Madness tournament, and there's so many upsets. It's crazy to think. I think that's the most unbreakable.
The competitiveness is more spread out.
And it's basketball. One injury can ruin your day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. That's a good one though. I love Record Machine. It's a fun one.
Record Machine is fun. You know what else is fun? Jordan and Matt rank stuff.
Oh, it's back.
The Toronto Raptors have started their NBA season. We talked about that a little bit last week. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Matt and I used to have another podcast. It was entitled Jordan and Matt Rank Stuff, and we did about, 30, 35 episodes. We got rolling on that. And basically,
I used to host a show called The Rap Sheet.
We do a topic, and then we just sort of figure out our rankings of said topic. I mean, it could be just about anything. We've done food over the years. We've done movies. And yes, we do Toronto Raptors. So, Matt, as the former host of The Rap Sheet, you got to give me your top 5 Raptors of all time. You can go 5-1 if you want.
5-1? Okay. Chris Bosh.
At 5?
Yeah. Chris Bosh at 5, Vince at 4. Then I go DeMar at 3, Kawhi at 2, and Lowry at 1.
You didn't even hesitate with some of those.
I mean, I thought you told me about it this afternoon. I've been thinking about it a lot. I think Kawhi being number 2 after one season here is so crazy, but it's like the season, you know? They won the championship that season. He was the finals MVP. So it's tough to deny him a spot in the top 5 for me. I don't know if I want to give him first, though, because he can't be the greatest player in a franchise ever if you only played one season. Sorry, Hakeem Olajuwon.
Yeah. Yeah. Your list is pretty solid. It is pretty solid. There's not a lot of holes I can poke. One hole that I'll flip around with would be I would put Vince Carter ahead of DeMar DeRozan.
Okay.
So I'm going to go...
I think the way Vince left for me is like it leaves a sour taste. And DeMar's got all the franchise records.
I hear you. But I'm going to look at this a little bit differently. So it depends. Do you want to talk about the greatest players to suit up for the franchise or the greatest players who actually meant something to the franchise? So that's how I think you differentiate Lowry from Kawhi Leonard or Vince Carter, is that one of them clearly meant more to the team.
Yeah.
Versus you're not making an argument in any way, shape, or form that Kyle Lowry is better than Kawhi Leonard or is better than Vince Carter. No. On their best night as a Raptor, those other two are going to be better than Kyle Lowry. But Kyle Lowry without the championship, I mean, let's be honest, the playoff resume was terrible.
You got to look at the body of work is what this is, I think. And Kawhi's body of work is small, but it's a really good body of work. I'm
going to go actually.
Do you have the same 5 people?
I do have the same 5 people. I'm trying to conjure up. I think you give it 2 more years. Like Siakam's going to knock on the door.
I think
he's going to knock on the door.
Siakam stays in like the 6 to 8 range. Like I mean,
it kills me.
Who's number 6? Damon Stoudemire, Jose Calderon. Like there's not a lot of thoroughbreds in there.
I would have. Yeah, I mean, basically, if you're talking about all-star appearances and stuff, you'd have to go Stoudemire, Antonio Davis.
Yeah.
I mean, we kick him. He was never great for a number 1 overall pick, but Bargnani, I'm sure, put up stats. Overall stats.
I'm looking at a list right now. It's got Van Vliet and Siakam both in the top 10.
Okay.
And this is as of 2 years ago.
I think you're right. I think you have the right 5. I would just tweak the order and put Vince ahead of DeMar. And then, but I'm good at keeping Bosh at 5.
It's funny reading some of these lists because a lot of it's very biased by the championship year. Like this list says Marc Gasol at 9.
No,
I don't think so.
I don't think you can do that.
And it's funny because you look now, like JV is putting up numbers for the Pelicans, but they probably don't win the championship without Marc Gasol. Like it's such a funny trade to look back on. But yeah, I mean, the Raptors, Chris Bosh is such an anomaly too because the team wasn't that good. He was just really good.
No, they had one year, right, where I think they either won the Atlantic. They had
Sam Mitchell won Coach of the Year.
Yeah, they had home court against the Nets.
And stunk it up in the playoffs.
And stunk it up, lost in 6 games, and that was it. And then the next year, they were basically stripping everything down, right? Mitchell gets fired, and it was just never quite on the road to recovery after that.
This list, who is it? TSN's got Lou Williams at 23. 24, it's Pat Patterson. That tells you how bad this franchise has been. Donyell Marshall. Tracy McGrady doesn't get enough love, I feel.
Tracy McGrady doesn't because he had one good year as a 6th man, and then he went to Orlando, and it was like, whoa. Because the big thing was like Carter or McGrady, and everyone felt comfortable in the Carter skin. I think McGrady, for a snapshot of a period, was actually a better basketball player than Vince Carter.
Vince Carter was very flash, and people remember the flash. That's the thing. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and Raptors fans will die on the Kyle Lowry hill, especially because Kawhi Leonard really hasn't done much since he left.
Yeah.
But I mean, you don't win the championship without Kawhi Leonard.
Is there a world where you could argue Vince at 1 or 2?
Maybe
because there's going to be somebody who listens to this who says, "Look,
it might be Brian Goldfinger."
I get the exit. The Raptors were as much to blame for said exit. It was not a good culture. It was not a good management structure. So I get that part of it. And for what Vince meant to basketball in Canada, he deserves to get a little bit higher of an homage. That's why you'd always hear the argument on who deserves a statue. If they're going to put up a statue,
just do those 5.
I guess maybe like they did with the Toronto Maple Leaf players where they're on the bench. Is that what you do? I mean, the obvious one for me is the Kawhi shot statue.
The Kawhi shot has to be like him in the squat position, as weird as that's going to look.
I know.
You need Vince with the ball under his leg.
Yeah.
You need Chris Bosh looking like a T-Rex. I don't know.
And Lowry drawing a charge.
Lowry taking a charge. And then who's the other one we had on there?
Bosh.
Yeah.
Oh, DeMar.
DeMar. Yeah. I don't know
DeMar throwing an air ball in the playoffs. Would be a good one too.
That's tough. I mean, he won a dunk competition, didn't he? Or he was in one.
He was in one.
Yeah, he didn't win it.
No.
But I don't know. Just put those 5, and I don't think anybody complains with those 5. If you're doing most influential Raptors, you can argue the Raptors aren't here without Vince Carter. Like, there's a lot of people that'll say that.
Yeah.
But as far as like greatest Raptors of all time, I don't think Vince is in the top 2.
Vince Carter, there's an interesting, we're not doing DocsBox here, but there is a documentary that was available on Netflix. And one of the things that he brought to the Toronto area that I never realized, the idea of bottle service at clubs.
I know. It was such a foreign idea.
Like what? Who does what? And
You can
Vince
go
is
to
like,
you can go to Junction downtown Peterborough and get that now. I mean, we probably pissed off some Raptors fans because every time I open my mouth, I do.
Yeah.
I had somebody message me last week when I said they're an insufferable Twitter fan base, and he proved me right. He DM'd me on Twitter about it.
Oh, no.
All right, whatever. It's a tough list because like the Kawhi Leonard thing is such an anomaly. Like you're never gonna have a guy show up for 1 year and win a championship and leave again. So how do you rank that?
It's tough. Blows me away.
Is. But it's a fun conversation.
It is a fun conversation to have, and that is how we do. Jordan and Matt rank stuff. I'm curious with the NBA. Oh, LeBron James. The Lakers are going to be terrible.
Yeah,
like really terrible.
Probably. I've given
he missed
up
the
on
playoffs. Is he at this point in your mind? Obviously, the big thing this year is that if he stays healthy, he's going to pass Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as the all-time leading scorer in the NBA. I heard a great conversation on The Ringer the other day where it's, does he seem over the ring chase part of it, and now it's just like stat stuffing part of it? Because
I think so. I mean,
LeBron of 5 years ago wouldn't tolerate the infrastructure that's around him at present. They're terrible.
I mean,
they're an awful team.
We say this like he wasn't in the finals 2 years ago.
I'm not going to say bubble championship, but it was sort of a asterisk
well, there's
one.
people that argue it.
But, I mean, when you think about it, LeBron James of Cleveland, LeBron James of Miami, would he have allowed the team to deteriorate to its current state the way that the Lakers have?
No.
So now I'm like thinking...
He traded away Dwayne Wade in Cleveland.
I'm
like
just
immediately.
I'm waiting just to see. It's interested that it's like, okay, maybe it's not about the championships for him. Maybe he just wants to get 43,000 points, put some separation with Kareem.
I'm fine with that if he wants to do that.
And then just go about it.
Like I know like LeBron, I mean, I will always disagree on the greatest of all time conversation, but like his longevity, he's still putting up, they've only played 3 games, still putting up 27 a night. And he's a million years old.
But that's, if we had the greatest of all time conversation, that's the greatest feature of LeBron James is the sustainability of greatness.
Yeah.
Which from an athlete, except for Tom Brady, who are we talking about?
Well, we talked about Father Time earlier. It hasn't caught LeBron yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. And
but then there's the argument, again, I would always look to somebody on a bad team has to score. And that's why you get like the weird one-offs with like Gilbert Arenas and all this stuff. But so it's like, is he still a great dominant player, or is he a guy who's going to score 30 on a really bad team because he has to?
I think he scores 30 on any team he's on. Like it's LeBron James. That's the thing. And I remember I was watching the Christmas Day game probably 6-7 years ago, and Charles Barkley was saying, "Oh, Father Time's going to catch him in the next 2 years." And here we are 6-7 years later, still having this conversation about him scoring 27 a night. And I know the Lakers stink. He's still doing it for the Lakers under the bright lights. Like, that's the other thing, too. It's not like he's playing in a nowhere market. He's playing for the Lakers. So, I don't know. I think LeBron, he's, at this point, I don't even think it's about the stats. I think he just wants to play with this kid. Like, he wants to play in a game against or with Bronny, and that's
like
about
Gordie Howe style.
Exactly. And then he'll still play another 10 years.
Yeah. Get to 50,000 points.
What's the all-time games played record? We're just going for that one next.
Bring that up on the Magic Box. I would assume, boy, would it be like Robert Parrish?
It's not a bad guess. Yeah, Robert Parrish at 16-11.
a lot of games.
That's a lot of
I mean,
games.
LeBron's probably played a lot. Like
LeBron's at 1369. So he's 15th right now all time. By the end of this year, he'll probably be in the top 10.
Who we got? Where's my man Stockton? He's got to be high.
Stockton's 5th. So the top 5
Kevin Willis.
Top 5 are Parrish, Kareem, Vince, Dirk Nowitzki, Stockton, Malone, Garnett, Moses Malone, Kevin Willis, and Jason Terry.
The fact that Vince Carter's on that list, that shows you because he just decided to be a role player like late in his career.
His last game was like the COVID game where they pulled everyone off the court.
And he like nailed a big shot.
Yeah. Wow. They called it like halfway through, and that was his last game, which is crazy to think about.
Awesome stuff there. The Capital PTBO Sports Show. Matty, we're giving away or trying to give away some Pete's tickets each and every week. Can you give people a rundown on how exactly they can get their hands on something?
Keep your eye on our social media channels at the Capital PTBO, whether it be Instagram or Facebook. Mark usually plans some kind of giveaway to do free Pete's tickets. Why not? The Pete's are good this year. You know, every team's going to have their up and downs, but they're a fun, promising team, and they're a lot of fun to watch. They hit hard and they score a lot, which is what I like out of my hockey teams. And every week, Mark's giving away tickets. Sometimes it's Wednesdays. Sometimes it's Thursdays. There's Saturday games. You never know. So keep an eye on the Facebook page and the Instagram page, and you'll find out how to win there.
Going to be a lot of fun and a good team. As you mentioned, there's a real Rob Wilson signature on this squad.
It feels like for the first time since that like 2019-2020 team, which should have gone deep and then everything got canceled, it feels like Rob Wilson finally has like the formula that he wants when it comes to a team. So it's really exciting to watch. And I mean, admittedly, I haven't been out to a game yet, but that's got to change. I want to go stand down in it's like standing room in the one end now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's like a sandbar or something. Like
oh, it's sponsored. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like that idea.
That was bringing back a little old school panache because a lot of the season ticket holders were saying, the atmosphere was a lot better when they had the standing room in that one particular section. I don't think it's quite recaptured what it was because people aren't allowed to chain smoke back there, probably like they were back in the day. My dad was always a standing room chain smoker, like at the Oshawa Civic back in the day.
Way back when. I wonder why these buildings all fell apart so much.
I wonder why there's smoke stains all over the roof.
Scrape the tobacco off the roof. Yeah. I mean, it's just, here's what I want to do. Start a mosh pit in the standing room section. You want to talk about an atmosphere. Do that.
Yeah. This has been the Capital PTBO Sports Show, ending off on a terrific note, as always, producer Matthew Latour. You can find us. We're an MNC podcast production. We'll simulcast on your TV, Peterborough, Lindsay. And come and check us out at the Capital PTBO, 370 George Street North, or online at thecapitalptbo.ca. Shameless plug, some outstanding retro NHL merchandise is now available. Nordiques, Jets, Whalers, Canucks. A lot of great stuff if you want to come and check us out. And again, online, anytime, anywhere at thecapitalptbo.ca. For Producer Matty, I'm Jordan Mercier. We'll be back in the store next week with our main man, Mark Millian. You've been listening to the Capital PTBO Sports Show.